Hey, Pastor Tarun here. Welcome to Authentic Church. It's so good to have you with us. We really pray that this sermon blesses you and helps you to experience the authentic love of Jesus Christ in your life today. Hey, before we get into the message, can you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button so that we can keep you up to date with the latest sermons every week? All right, here's the message.
Today, we've been doing a series called My Big Fat Mouth. Who's been enjoying this series? Yeah? I got to be honest, it's been a little bit challenging, especially as one of the people that is preaching this series. You've got to examine yourself a little bit and ask yourself the question, am I talking to myself as well? Has anybody found that? Is this about me? I think we're all guilty of using our words in ways to hurt other people, using our words to criticize, to lie, to condemn. And today we're talking about one that I think is going to be challenging for all of us, including me, and that is gossip. Somebody say, ooh, gossip. We're going to wrap up the series with gossip today. But before I do, just letting you know we're starting a new series in November called Making Change. You would have seen the postcard on your seat. I encourage you, take these postcards away and give them to somebody who might benefit from it. We're going to be talking about financial stewardship. What do I mean by that? What I mean by financial stewardship is, how do you manage your money well? The Bible has a lot to say about wise money management. And in a society where we live and there is so much debt and so much financial hardship, I think it's really wise of us to have a look at what the Bible says and see if we can learn something about how to manage our money well, especially coming into Christmas. Anybody with me on that one? Yeah, so making change. If you know somebody that will benefit from that, make sure you invite them along. Somebody say November 24th.
November 24th.
I want you to put it in your calendar, write it on your fridge, make sure you are here. It's a Wednesday night, 6:30. We have special guest speaker, Shane Willard. Now, Pastor Shane Willard is a rabbi-trained biblical scholar. Now, don't let that scare you. He is an exceptional communicator. He is very entertaining and very, very insightful when it comes to understanding the Bible from a Hebrew perspective. Because we all know that Jesus was a Jew, yes? So it's good to sort of understand how first century Jews thought if we're to understand what is being said in the Bible. And he's going to be speaking on the book of Revelation. One of the most common questions I get asked as a pastor is, Pastor, is this the last days? Is Jesus coming back? And how do we read Revelation? Well, I thought to answer all of those questions, come on the 24th of November, and I'll let Shane handle the tough questions, okay? He has got a really, really awesome perspective on the book of Revelation. So if you've ever wondered what on earth is this book about, I encourage you to come along, and I know you'll get something out of it. And bring a friend. It's an open night, it's free, so just let's pack this place out and, get encouraged by somebody who's just got something to offer. Now, on that night, of course, there won't be life groups. Bring your life group here, all right? This is a combined night, so all your life groups come here for life group. That would be wonderful. For those online, we will try and get a video of it available. We won't stream it on the night, so if you can come into the building, that would be preferable, but we will try and make the video available after the fact. Fantastic. Thank you, Kai. You've done a terrific job. Very good. I was sitting in the cafe this week with a friend of mine who comes to this church, and in fact, we've known each other for many years. We used to work together, and we were reminiscing about this job that we used to work together. And we were just chatting and talking along, and then all of a sudden the conversation shifted to the people that used to annoy us. Oh, do you remember this person? Oh my gosh, oh yes, that person. They were so frustrating. I couldn't stand her. Oh, you know what she did to me when I was there? And we started to exchange stories about the people that we remember all those years ago. And then the conversation turned to Sunday, and she said to me, so what are you preaching on this Sunday, Tarun? I said, I'm preaching on gossip. She goes, right. We better watch what we're saying then. I don't know about you, but gossip is one of those things that I think we probably all struggle with. It's so easy to slip into a conversation that turns into gossip, isn't it? It doesn't start that way, but it can so very quickly and very easily shift into a place where it's not edifying and not building up the person that we're speaking about. And it can be damaging to us, it can be damaging to the person we're speaking about, and it can be damaging to the person we're speaking to. And the Bible actually has a lot to say about gossip. And what I thought was really interesting when I started to look into this was not so much about that the Bible says something about gossip, but the Bible actually has multiple words to describe gossip. You know, we've kind of got one word, gossip, but the Bible uses multiple words, and it gives it a much, much broader meaning than perhaps many of us have considered. I was sitting on date night the other night, on Friday night with my wife, and we were talking about the sermon, and I said to her, what do you define gossip as? Because I was really trying to wrap my head around it. And so we were talking back and forth, giving examples of, would this be gossip? Or what if we did this? Would this be gossip? What if we didn't intend to hurt somebody, but we had to talk about them? Is that gossip? And we were sort of going back and forth. And what we realized is it's really hard to nail down. There are so many nuances in what many people believe is and isn't gossip. In fact, we found out that many things we disagreed on. One of us thought, yes, that's gossip, and the other one didn't think it was gossip. And so as a group of people who are here, I think if we went around the room, we would probably find very different ideas and very different definitions of what gossip is. So I thought the first thing I want to do is to try and define or at least unpack some of what the Bible says gossip is. And then ask ourselves the question, have I ever engaged in conversation in that way? And as I always say, I'm preaching to myself first, okay? So nothing I say today is about making you feel ashamed or bad. It's about saying, hey, what can we learn together and how can we grow together to become more like Jesus? Are you still with me? Fantastic. Well, the first place that I looked at was in Romans, and there's in Romans chapter 1, you might be familiar, there's this list of characteristics of people who have turned their back on God. And it calls them godless people, or people who have rejected God. And it says that their hearts were filled with every wickedness, evil, and depravity. But then it goes on to list what the evil and depravity is. Just in case you were wondering, this is what evil and depravity, and it lists murder, and it lists adultery, and it lists all these different things. And then right in the middle is this word called whisperers. Whisperers, which is a nice way of saying people who spread private or intimate information about others. Gossip. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Or maybe that's a little bit confronting. People whose hearts are filled with every wickedness, evil, and depravity, murderers, liars, adulterers, and gossipers. We don't often talk about that in church, do we? We don't often confront the idea of gossip, and it's so common. But yet here, Romans says that if you whisper about people's intimate information without their knowledge or for no good reason, well, that's considered an evil or a depraved act. In 2 Thessalonians, Paul is talking about the undisciplined life. He says somebody who is undisciplined, and he lists a whole bunch of characteristics of a person who is undisciplined, and he also includes meddlers. The word meddlers, getting involved in the affairs of other people for no good reason. Meddling in other people's lives, talking about other people's lives. Gossiping, Paul describes as an undisciplined life. Somebody who lacks discipline, lacks self-control, spends their time meddling in other people's lives. I wonder if I've ever done that before. And if you're wondering if that's a big deal, well, Peter says in 1 Peter 4:15, he says, meddlers are likened to murderers, thieves, and criminals. That's the category he puts meddlers in. So if you like to meddle in other people's affairs, be careful. Peter looks quite poorly on that sort of stuff. In 1 Timothy, Paul talks to a young pastor named Timothy, and he's talking about the characteristics of leadership in a church. And he says they should not be babblers. Babblers. What are babblers? Babblers are people who mindlessly and pointlessly talk about other people. I wonder if I've ever mindlessly and thoughtlessly talked about other people. Probably. And in 1 Timothy 3:11, Paul says again about leaders that they should not be slanderous. Slanderous is somebody that brings into disrepute the character of another person. But what I found most confronting and most interesting about the word slander in Greek, if you look at the Greek, it is actually the word that is most often translated as the devil. It's diabolos. You know the scripture where it says Jesus was tempted by the devil and driven into the wilderness? Jesus was tempted by diabolos and driven into the wilderness. Well, Paul uses that same word when he's talking to Timothy. Leaders in your church should not be diabolos, talking about other people, should not take on the characteristics of the devil, who is all about bringing into disrepute the character and nature of other people. Wow. All of a sudden, gossip is not looking like this innocuous thing that, it's not a big deal, we're just having a chat. You know, have you ever heard people, I need to let you know something that's happened so you can pray for them? We love to pray for people in the church, don't we? You know, or did you hear what's going on? Now, I'm not a gossip, but I just wanted you to know. I wouldn't want you to get caught out. It's my concern for you. Now, I'm just a little bit concerned about the pastor and what he's been talking about. And I just wanted to check with somebody else. Am I out of line here when I'm just talking about the pastor like this? And I just wanted to know if I'm sensing in the spirit that there's something wrong. And I just wanted to talk. And if you ask them, have you talked to the pastor? They say, oh, no, I don't want to stir up trouble. See, we like to couch gossip in all sorts of Christian terms, or, we like to couch it in innocuous terms. We have gossip magazines. Oh, it's harmless to look at photos of people we don't know and read false stories that have just been made up by some journalist in an office, and read slanderous stories just for kicks, just for entertainment, just to pass time. But yet, if we look at what the Bible says, it's not harmless. It's not innocuous. It's not a small thing. In fact, God teaches us very clearly in the Word of God that gossip is so damaging that He puts it in the same category as wickedness, murder. The list goes on. So I guess the challenge we're left with is like, well, where does that leave me? How do I deal with that? How do I respond? If you're sitting there going, oh, I think I've caught myself out now. I think I've probably participated in that. That's okay. Like I said right from the beginning, I find myself in those categories sometimes as well. What I think we need to do is we need to just take the time to understand the kind of damage that gossip can do to others. Is anybody still with me? I know this is a little bit of a tough one to confront, but let's do it together. The first thing I want to look at is found in Proverbs 16, verse 28, and it says, a troublemaker plants seeds of strife, and gossip separates the best of friends. Gossip is a seed that your spouse, or you're frustrated with your children. In frustration, sometimes we can want to unload on somebody, but if we're not careful, our unloading becomes slanderous. Our unloading just becomes complaining. Our unloading becomes gossip, and it sows seeds of doubt. It sows seeds of disunity in the other person. The person that's listening to it all of a sudden sees your spouse, your child, that person you're talking about in a different light. It taints the way that they perceive other people. And it also leads to broken relationship. You know, one of the things I learnt many years ago, Melanie and I went through a bit of a hard time with our marriage and many years ago. And one of the things I learned, you've got to be really careful who you talk to about your marital challenges. It's very easy to talk to your girlfriend or your mates about your spouse and say, hey, I can't believe she did this week, or I can't believe he did this week. And they chorus in with their complaints about their spouse. But be very careful it doesn't turn into something that poisons your heart against your spouse. What I found is the people I needed to talk to were the people that wouldn't agree with my perspective. See, that's what we tend to do when we gossip. We go to people that we know will say, oh my gosh, I totally get where you're coming from. I know what you're talking about. Oh yes, I went through that too. And we go to people who will justify our position. What we need to do is go to people who are going to confront us and say, well, is that the full truth? Is that the whole story? One of the reasons when Melanie and I split up and it got to the stage where we were actually separated and Melanie had moved back to Melbourne, one of the things that I was blessed with is I had 5 good male friends who none of them were happy about us splitting up. And every one of them called me and said, Tarun, what's going on? And I said, can we go out for dinner? And I was hoping for some sympathy. And every single one of them said to me, what are you doing, mate? You're an idiot. I said, yeah, but this and yeah, but that. And that. They said, so what? That's marriage. Get over it. Go and get your wife back. Every single one of them confronted me about what I was saying rather than consoling me and allowing me to stew in my own negativity and criticism. See, too often what we do is when we're frustrated, we turn it into an idle conversation just to unload. But if we're not unloading on the right person, it will poison the well of the relationship that we are a part of. Our gossip hurts the people we're speaking about. The gossip hurts the listener. Proverbs 17 says, wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip. Liars pay close attention to slander. Gossip hurts the person that is hearing, because like I said earlier, it poisons their perspective of others. And also, I don't know if you've ever been somebody who has to listen to a complainer. If you've got a person who complains a lot in your life, it's tiring. And it hurts the person that has to listen to that, even if they're not a gossip, even if they're not a person that engages in idle conversation. If they have to constantly listen to you complaining and whinging and criticizing other people, what happens is it takes their spirit down with you. You see, our brains, God has made our brains in a way that they are wired to match the emotion of the people that we are with. Have you ever sat with somebody who's angry and you come away feeling angry? Or is depressed and you come away feeling a bit depressed yourself? Or happy and you feel buoyant? See, we will match the moods and emotions of the people that we are with inadvertently. That's what our brain does. And so if you are gossiping to other people, what you are doing is you are transferring your negativity, your criticism, your poor attitudes, your offense, your anger onto somebody else, and you're making it their problem as well as your problem. And I know the old saying says a problem shared is a problem halved. And it's good to talk to somebody when you've got challenges. But you've got to talk for solution, not talk for complaint. Is anybody still with me? Do you know the difference? You talk for solution. I'm coming to you because I recognize there's something wrong and I want a solution to it. I'm not coming to you to talk to you just to be. The speaker, gossip hurts you. If you engage in gossip, it damages your spirit. When you're arguing with your neighbor, Proverbs says, don't betray the other person's secret. Otherwise, people will accuse you of gossip and you will never regain your good reputation. In a very practical way, gossip kills your reputation. If you have a reputation for talking about other people, people very quickly lose trust in you. They will very quickly see through. There's an old saying that says if somebody is willing to gossip to you, they're willing to gossip about you. And I have seen this over and over and over again in the lives of people who have struggled with gossip, where they will gossip about a person and as a reputation. I remember one of my best friends in Melbourne, when I first met him, I was working in ANZ, and we used to go out for coffee on our break and just hang out and chat. And he said to me one day, he said, Tarun, you know why I hang out with you? And I said, why? And he said, because you passed my test. I said, your test? What test? And he said, when I first met you, it's very hard in a corporate environment to know who you can trust and who's just trying to climb the ladder and is going to step all over you to get there. And he said, so I said a couple of things in passing to you to see if they would come back to me. Because I knew that if you were a gossip, you'd end up telling that person and I would hear it back. And he said, but nothing ever came back. And he said, so I knew I could trust you, and that's when I started opening up and we became friends. You see, stuff comes back. If we're not careful with gossip, it comes back. It damages our reputation. It damages our relationships. You still with me? Yeah. So how do we deal with it? What do we do? I want to be really practical today, okay? I don't want to make this complex, because the reality is this is a part of our everyday life, and some of us have probably got into such a habit with idle conversation that we don't even know we're doing it sometimes. And so really practically, the first thing I want to talk to you about is dealing with offense. You know, the root of much gossip is hurt and offense. The time that you're most willing to talk about another person is when you're upset with them, when you're hurt by them. You know, in Matthew 18, it says, if another person sins against you, go to them privately and point out the offense. If the person listens and confesses it, well, you've won that person back. The right and wise way to deal with hurt is to go to the person that hurt you and say, hey, what you said before, I wasn't cool with that. That really hurt me. And what you'll find is it gives you an opportunity to talk about it, and many times you can restore the relationship. If instead what you do is you go to somebody else and say, you'll never believe what they did or what they said, you never repair that relationship, and what happens is the unforgiveness and the offense and the hurt inside of you grows and grows and grows. You know, in church, I want to encourage you, okay? I know sometimes we can see things that happen in church that maybe frustrate us or upset us. Maybe the pastor does something or says something that you're not happy with, or maybe one of the leaders do. I want to encourage you. Be a person who will always talk to the offending party. Don't talk around the offending party. You know, one of the things I love about Rick and Elsa, when we first became leaders in this church, Rick came to me and he said, Pastor, he said, I've got some concerns. And he said, there's some things that are upsetting me, but I don't want to talk to anyone else except you. And we sat down and we talked it through, and Rick and I have become great friends because we dealt with the stuff that needed to be dealt with in the right way. It didn't become a fester. It didn't become a talk fest amongst Rick's friends. He came to the source and he said, let's fix it. Let's figure it out, and let's get it out of the way. And, you know, and I want to encourage you, that's the way you deal with offense. That's the way you deal with challenges. That's the way you deal with frustrations. And look, if talking directly to a leader or a pastor is scary, I understand that. So what you can do, and I've had this happen too, is go and talk to your leader. If you're in a life group, go and talk to your life group leader and say, hey, I'm concerned about this, but I don't feel comfortable talking to the pastor myself. And so what's happened is the life group leader will come to me and say, this person has a concern. Would you be able to address this concern with them? And so we sit down, we talk it through. But that's a healthy way of dealing with your offense or dealing with your hurt or dealing with your frustration. Because the reality is churches are full of hurt people. You know that, yeah? Churches are full of hurt people, and the reality of hurt people is hurt people hurt people. Think about that for a minute. Hurt people hurt people. And probably the most common reason people walk away from the church is because of offense. Somebody said or did something to me or didn't do something for me, and I got offended and I left. And time again, the sad thing is I see these people years later and I say, hey, did you ever find a church? And they say, no, I never found a church. I said, well, why don't you come back? And they say, no, I can't come back now. It's been too many years. And so people disconnect themselves from the family of God because they take on hurt, but they never talk with the right person. They just talk with everybody else. And then by that time, they realize they can't stay in that place because they've poisoned the well. So deal with offense directly. That's the first thing. Avoid gossipy people and conversations. You know those people that they have a reputation for, they love to have a chat. They love to tell you all what's the latest news, what's the goss. Can I encourage you, if you know people like that, try and avoid them, okay? But if you have to spend time with them, stay out of the conversations that are gossip conversations. Okay, just excuse yourself from the conversation. Just give me a moment, I need to go somewhere else while you talk about this. And be straight up. Just say, I don't want to participate in this conversation. Well, one thing will happen is they will probably feel challenged about what they're talking about. But what you do is you set a standard for yourself. You say, you know what, this is where I draw the line. I don't need to talk about this. That person's not here. Let's not talk about it. Okay? Another way that you can avoid gossipy conversations is just to ask straight up. Have you talked to the person that is upsetting you? Because if you haven't talked to the person that's upsetting you, it's pointless talking to me. You can talk to me all you like, but I can't do anything about it. How about you try and talk to the person who's upsetting you? Or maybe I can come with you and help you talk to that person. Okay? Another way you can do it is you can change the subject. The greatest subject changer is, anyway. I do that a lot. Some of my staff will know this. They will often, they'll be mid-conversation and I'll say, anyway. And we move on to something else, because if I see it going in a direction that I don't want to go into that direction, that's where we put a stop to it. Let's get back on topic now. We were meeting about the colour of the curtains. Anyway, and move on. Change the topic. Avoid gossipy people, and if you can't avoid them, avoid gossipy conversations. If you set a standard for the people that are in your world, one of two things will happen. They will either cut you out of their life, and that may not be a bad thing, or they will feel challenged enough to reflect on their own choices and they will make changes. Okay? Don't be afraid of being rejected by people who are living with a standard that is not your standard. If they reject you, and that's life. It happens sometimes. But better you make a stand for something than just go along and be caught up in the milieu of what people are saying just for the sake of being accepted. The third thing is this. Learn to close your mouth. Learn to close your mouth. When somebody is talking to you, if somebody is gossiping, okay? One of the things that, some people need to vent. They need to get it out of them. Okay, that's fine. To be an understanding friend, sometimes you have to be a good listener. A good listener does not have to respond. Did you know that? Most of the time we listen to respond. Have you ever found yourself in conversation and you lose track of the conversation because you were thinking of a story that you can inject into the conversation when they stop talking? It's like, oh yeah, I've got a story to share about this. And so you start formulating your own story. You're not actually listening to them at all. They're just talk. And as soon as there's a break in the conversation, oh, well, you know what happened to me? And we jump in with our own story. That's listening to respond. And most of us do it, okay? We listen to respond or interject. What we've got to do is, if you want to be a good listener, don't listen to respond, just listen to listen. Just listen to listen. And then you'll hear the emotion, you'll hear what's going on, you'll hear the intent behind what is being said. And if something is being said that you think is going to be hurtful to them or be hurtful to you, well, then you have an opportunity to speak with wisdom rather than just jumping in with your own answer. Close your mouth. You don't have to say, oh yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah, they did this to me, and then recount your own accounts. No, don't worry about it. Just be silent. Just nod. Just say, I understand that you're frustrated. Maybe we should talk about this some more with that person. And so you steer them towards a healthy choice rather than participating in the choice that they're making. Watch your tongue and keep your mouth shut. That's pretty blunt, isn't it? Watch your tongue, keep your mouth shut, and you'll stay out of trouble. Good advice, I think. If you learn to shut your mouth, you'll stay out of trouble. One of the conversations that I have with my teenage boys sometimes is if they're in trouble, they just want to talk, and make excuses. And I'm saying, if you just be quiet for 5 seconds, you won't allow this to become worse than it needs to be. Shut your mouth, you'll stay out of trouble. But sometimes we get so worked up about talking about the situation or justifying ourselves or making excuses for ourselves that we just get ourselves in more and more and more trouble. Can anybody relate? And finally, I want to encourage you. If you're feeling yourself challenged today, if you're feeling yourself confronted today, don't feel guilty, don't feel ashamed. Just do something about it, okay? Make a change. Just make a decision that, you know what, this week I'm going to make a decision that I'm not going to engage in idle conversation about other people, whether it's meaningless or whether it's designed to tear them down. If it's idle conversation, I'm just not going to do it. And what you can do instead, so Paul says this, if somebody struggles with theft, if they steal, give him something to do with his hands to serve other people, and he will change his habits. You see, Paul understands that you don't just change habits by saying, I'm going to stop doing it. You actually have to replace the habit with something positive. You know, I'm trying to lose weight, and so my wife replaces my McDonald's with carrot sticks and cucumber. And hopefully I know, it's like eating sadness, but she's replacing my bad habit with a good habit, all right? And hopefully over time, I will learn to love carrots and cucumber the way I love McDonald's. But right now, I've just got to do it as a replacement. When I go to grab something, instead of grabbing a bag of chips, I have to grab my cucumber and carrots. And that's okay. So if you're struggling with gossip, what can you do? What's something that you can do instead? You've got to find something to do with your tongue. Here's an idea. Become an encourager. Become an encourager. Because you know the opposite of tearing somebody down is building them up. Become a person that finds the good in others. Become a person that says, hey, you know what? I love what you did just then. I want to see you do that more. Or I love the way you helped out this morning. Thank you so much. I love your smile. I love your dress. Whatever it is, just compliment people. Be an encourager. And what you'll find is you'll gossip less. You'll feel offended less often. You'll criticize less often, because it's very hard to be critical of somebody when you're building them up. It's very hard to think negatively about somebody when you're thinking about all the good things they are. And so replace the habit with another habit. And if all else fails, just walk away. Just walk away. Just say, I just got to excuse myself, and walk away. You don't have to explain why. And they don't have to understand why. If you know that it's a situation that you don't need to be a part of, it's a conversation that you don't want to partake in, and you know that there are people that will not stop if you ask them to stop, just walk away. Time for carrot sticks and cucumber. Excuse me. My salad's calling. I hope this series has been helpful for you guys, and I hope it's encouraged you that we be careful of using our words well. You know, because I'll take you back to my first message all the way back at the beginning of October, where we talked about the image of God. You know, everything we've talked about really pivots off this idea that every man, woman, and child has been made in the image of God. And when we use our tongue to harm people, to tear them down, to criticize them, to tell lies, to gossip about them, to complain about them, what we are doing is we are tearing down the image of God in others, and we're tearing it down in ourselves. Because God hasn't called us to be diablos. He's called us to be sons and daughters of the Most High.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We really pray that that message blessed you. If you enjoyed it, why don't you share it with a friend that you think will enjoy it also? And hit a like and give us a comment, because we'd love to hear back from you. If you'd like to give to the work of Authentic Church or get more involved, head over to our website, authenticchurch.com.au. We look forward to seeing you next time.